Hello, everyone in Lemonade Legend land. This is Michelle Faust, and welcome to the Lemonade Legend podcast. We give a voice to people with their lemonade stories, powerful women who are making a difference in the world. So I am so excited today to announce my guest and introduce her. She is Meredith Richardson, and she's a midlife coach. I think she's right in the realm, right here where we all are, needing to find our direction. And she will help you find that. And I found Meredith on a Facebook group. And I love the name. It is Midlife, where the Queen saves herself. Welcome, Meredith.
Thank you so much for that awesome welcome. I'm really excited to be here. I always have a great time when we talk, and I'm really excited to be a part of this.
We do have fun talking, and we have a lot of common things going on. And we have talked, with halfway across the world and, all different situations. Now you're only 2 hours away from me, and I can't even come see you.
I know. I thought that I would get to see you in March, right? And that was when I was coming from France, and we had plans. We were going to get together, and then boom, all of a sudden we just needed to shelter in place. And so that's what I did here in Tucson, and that's what you're doing. And so, yeah, we've still only connected online.
Yeah, but it is a beautiful thing that we're all discovering that even though it feels like the world stopped, it didn't, because we're just finding new ways to keep going. And although I would love to just reach out and give you a hug, it's a great thing that we do have the technology. So it's almost as good as, not quite, but it's close, and a heck of a lot more convenient. And, in many ways, I haven't filled up my car with gas, and I don't even know how long.
It makes sense. If you're not going anywhere, you don't need to, right? That's the way it is.
Exactly. And there's the good and the bad of that, the economy and everything else. But we don't want to talk about things that are, going to bring us down.
Right.
So, we're going to talk about some lighthearted things and have some fun.
Okay.
I'll start with the fact that one of the things that I like about the way I'm working right now is that I only have to dress from the top up. And I'm not going to show you, but I'm wearing gym shorts with my.
Are you?
Nice. Yes.
I have shorts, but not gym shorts on.
I got gym shorts, and it's a dangerous thing to wear yoga pants and gym shorts and things like that, because I could be gaining weight and I don't know it because I'm not buttoning up, my dress pants. So I have to do a check-in on the scale every once in a while to make sure I'm not getting out of control. So yeah, I told my husband the other day, I said, I'm only having to wear my tops, and I'm sick of them already.
Right.
I'm not even having to put outfits together, but I'm like so done with the tops I have in my closet. But anyways, it's interesting time, and we're making the best of it. We're making lemonade out of the bitter Corona lemons, and a lot of good things have come out of it. And I think you've seen it as well. Because
Absolutely.
we're on platforms that are, naturally growing and thriving because we're on the internet.
Right. And I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how it changes how we interact with each other and what we prioritize when we come out. Because we talk about going back to normal, but I don't think we're fully going to go back to normal, because humans are creatures of habit and we like our habits. And so we've been doing this long enough that this is becoming part of our habit. Mm-hmm. And so certainly there will be things that we swing back to, but there will be other things that will be like, I don't actually want to give that up. I actually like not commuting an hour each way, right, in heavy traffic. And is there a way now that I can continue to work from home? So I think we could see a big upsurge in terms of people commuting from home, working from home, right, and not doing the commute. Which then is better for the environment. It's better for them. They can have more time at home. They have more time to socialize with family and friends, more time to relax. It's already been better for the environment globally, right? They've seen that in China. They've seen that in Italy. I'm sure if they're doing satellite video footage for us, right? I bet it looks better over Los Angeles than normal.
Well, I'm sure it does. And I know I read somewhere where scientists, certain scientists, I'm not sure their specialty, but they've actually been able to measure the earth vibration, and that has like gone
Wow.
way down, because literally when you think of billions of people walking, stomping their feet,
Right.
that the earth actually has a vibration because of that. And it's just,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
I was thinking of this as maybe this is what doesn't get us to go beyond 2 degrees Celsius, right? Maybe
Yeah.
this is what gets us to, actually stop global warming and have it be that we're not going to increase at that level. I don't know. I mean, there are possibilities.
Yeah. And I think the real key for everybody surviving and thriving is to be flexible and to be a little bit accepting of what might not be the norm, or creating a new norm. That's all we can do,
And that's it. And I think that the hardest part for people is recognizing just that, right? That this is it. We're right here in the present, and in the present moment, for most people, right, it's fine. It's when we start to look at, well, I want this though. I want that. I want to be, that is when we're not fine anymore, because then we're looking at things that we can't actually control. So if we focus just on what we can control, if we're focusing on the present moment and what we can do with that, and sort of short-term goals, then we're able to sit better in that uncertainty of what's going on around us.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what you do, because I think this is going to open up some real opportunity for you. Because we talk about home-based businesses and that and transitioning, but I really think you're going to see that midlife female really in a position to need to make some transition, because for those of them who have lost their job, they're likely to be in an age that they're a little bit less hireable. And I hate to say that, but it's true.
Right.
Because I was one of those people that aged out of corporate hiring,
Right.
But they're going to be too young to retire. And so they're really going to have to look at what other opportunities there are for them. So talk a little bit about, your zone of genius and how you help people like that.
Sure. So I just wanted to highlight, there is that piece in terms of corporate America. You're right that they're not supposed to discriminate against you based on age, right? And at the same time, everybody knows that they do, and that there's this thing where if you are a woman getting to be a certain age, you're likely to be let go. Just like if you're a man getting to be that age, you're not going to get promoted anymore. And there's, and that's the difference in terms of the bias, is men are still going to be there in all likelihood, right? If they reach that level, they just won't get promoted. Whereas a woman, you're just like, oh yeah, you're just not going to be used. We're just going to get rid of you. You get the off ramp. And so it's not simply about finding the other opportunities. It's being like you and actually creating opportunities, or being like me and creating opportunities. And so for me, that's the zone of genius, I guess, is that I used to be a mediator. So I used to do a lot of divorce mediation, helping people to go through the worst time in their lives and come to an agreement and create a solution that worked best for both of them. And so one of my strengths is that I can help people to see their best selves, even when they're at their worst. And I'm strengths-based. So I can sort of see how it all comes to play and what people can do with things before they can see that themselves. I'm also intuitively strategic. So I'm not somebody who does like the big plans for the year kind of thing. But if I'm sitting with two people in conflict, I can get them to agreement faster than most. So there's just
that is a skill.
It is a very good skill. It is really, I'm very quick at reading people and seeing sort of where they need to go and helping them to see their abilities that they don't necessarily see anymore. And so it used to bring me joy to have these people that were in a room that, you know, they couldn't agree on whether this guy was blue anymore. And I was able to get them to agree on the details of a divorce, you know, so it was a whole different way of looking at the other person. It was shaping their beliefs again so that they would see the positives in addition to the negatives. So yeah, that's sort of my superpower, is all of that, is being able to think strategically and see that and help people to see the best.
I can see where that background would really give you tremendous skill in now what you're doing with coaching midlife women. Yeah.
Yes, because there's a lot of change management basically in doing that kind of work, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And so then when I'm coaching women at midlife, you know, it's the same sort of beliefs that come up, right? There's this feeling of you can't do it, that you've been told by society you can't do it. This isn't going to happen. This isn't going to work. There are all the can'ts. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that you actually can. You just have to shift that focus so that you can see all the possibilities that you actually have. And so it's shifting that mindset and being able to see a way forward. And I'm very good at sitting in uncertainty. So as you know, right, the last year and a half, I've been traveling the world. I probably spent the most amount of time in Norway, but only in 90-day chunks. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know where I'm going to be for more than 30 to 90 days at a time. I might know, I was doing pet sitting, and so I would know, okay, I'm going to be at this person's house, but I wouldn't know that person. I wouldn't know that town. I wouldn't know anything. And so now being in this situation with COVID-19, it looks a lot like my life looked before. And the difference is, of course, that, you know, there's the coronavirus, there's a pandemic, so that part is different. But in terms of how I live and how I deal with living in uncertainty, I've had 18 months of practice with that. I'm really talented at that, and I can help other people get comfortable in that too.
Well, you know, I don't want to, you know, be negative Nancy, but I kind of have a feeling that there's going to be uncertainty moving on for a long, long time. I think we've just entered into that world, and that that we need to understand how to be able to coexist with uncertainty.
Right. I think so too, because the fact is the scientists don't know, right? I mean, you have the charts. I've been following one out of the University of Washington that says that, okay, so we're going to go through the curve and then it's going to be smooth sailing, except that there are all these conditions in place for that smooth sailing, right? The smooth sailing happens as long as we have proper testing in place, and we're going back through anybody that tests positive. We then go back through and get all their contacts and test them too. And all of these things that you do to prevent a pandemic from occurring again. But just doing that level for us is going to feel very uncertain. That is still having to be aware that there is something out there. And in some ways, it reminds me of after 9/11 when, you know, we had red, yellow, green, and we never got back to green. We always were like yellow or orange, but we never got back to green.
And that's true, though. Yeah, it's like,
it was a fallacy. We didn't. So I feel like with the coronavirus, we're going to be there too. We're going to be in sort of the yellow orange, and you're going to have to live your life as if we're in the green, because the reality is that for the vast majority of life, you're going to be in the green, right? And so that's sort of the trick, is recognizing that piece of it and living with the fact that the world around you might be a little uncertain, but you can be perfectly fine with that uncertainty.
Yeah, and again, learning how to live within that. And I think that there are certain societies, you know, Israel being one of them, they've had to learn to live with that kind of, you know, threat right there.
Right.
And how do you exist with that and still find the peace and the love and fulfillment, you know, life with that right there? And so it obviously it can be done.
Right. Yeah. And I would say that's even harder, because in this situation with the coronavirus, this isn't a person that wants to harm you, right? This is something that you can catch from people, but it's not anybody intentionally going out to make your life miserable. Whereas if you're talking about Israel or the Middle East, then you're talking about people that want to harm you. You're talking about a bomb, right? And so that to me would be even harder to live with.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good, it's a good kind of a reality check that, you know, we are as strong as we choose to be. And
Absolutely.
we can put ourselves in a situation and deal with whatever is in front of us.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I'm all about with the lemonade stories. And, you know, this is a bitter lemon right now. But you know me, I always got to bring out that lemon story with everybody. So can I ask you to share your lemon story?
You can, but I want to share one thing first, and then I'm going to go right into the lemons. Sure. Okay?
Absolutely.
The other piece of this that I think is going to end up being lemonade for both of us is that women our age in midlife might not have always been great about using technology as a way to interact with each other. Mm-hmm. That if you have been used to having your friends close by and being able to socialize with them on a regular basis, you may never have gone into a Facebook group to find friends, right? You may never have decided to call a friend online using Messenger or Skype or WhatsApp or Zoom. And now you have also the parents that are having to learn how to homeschool kids using new technology, and the teachers that are having to learn how to use the technology to provide online learning for these kids. And so all of that is being normalized without us having to teach people that it's okay. And I think that it's going to be helpful in terms of going forward. I think it's going to be helpful with you doing the podcast, right? That people are going to be more tuned into it because they feel more comfortable with it, because they've had to get comfortable with it in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
And for me doing online coaching, because I do it from all over the world, now people are more comfortable with, okay, I see your face on the computer screen and I don't actually see you in person, but I'm still okay with that.
Yeah.
So that is the one additional piece of lemonade.
Well, but because you said that, now I have something I need to add.
Go ahead.
So I live in a condominium community, and I have, and we're all great friends with neighbors, and, you know, men and women couples, but our ladies group, as I'll call them, you know, we play mahjong one night a week, and
right.
And my kids, when they heard I took up mahjong, they thought I'd gone crazy. One daughter said, "Oh my God, Mom, have you turned 80?" Not for old ladies. Anyway, so we're used to being really close to each other. We go down to the clubhouse, and
right.
we have book club one a month,
right.
and we have happy hour. And now all of a sudden, even though, you know, they're neighbors, they're right here,
right,
we're still not seeing each other. So last night was the first night we did the book club on Zoom. And I'm a little bit more tech savvy than some of my friends are.
Right.
And so it was just kind of funny because it was like one of the ladies showed a note that her son had written that was all the directions on how to get on Zoom.
That is perfect.
And then as we were wrapping it up, I heard a couple of them saying, "How do I get off of this thing?" Because you introduced that, I just had to say, but they're learning.
Right. And that's the thing, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. That's the new way to communicate with people because we can't get closer to them. So it's a whole different thing.
Yep, it is. Now,
okay.
Take it away.
Let's go right into the deep dive.
Well, and the reason, you know, because I want to make it clear, it's not just that I like to put people on the hot seat, but people, they are what they were.
Right.
They become what their experiences are. And a lot of that is choice, because sometimes bad things can happen, and you can choose to stay in a negative zone, or you choose to grow. And so I just want to point that out in case that sort of gets lost in the translation sometimes because they don't bring it up. that is really what the power of Lemon to Lemonade is all about. Who are you now, and how does it
Right,
serve you well? So
right. Okay. No, I agree with you on that in terms of you have to make the best out of your life. Whatever life gives you, you have an option as to how you handle it. And so you can make the best out of it, or you can get lost in it, right? And get lost in it for a while and still make the best out of it. But there is that growth period. So for me, the lemons part, in 2015, I was a mediator. I was working in Maine and New Hampshire, primarily doing family law and small claims mediations. And then I was also an attorney. I was an attorney in Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts, although it was at that point, it was just sort of a background thing. I had it and it worked for mediation, but I wasn't going in and litigating in court anymore. And I had been a guardian ad litem. So I used to represent the best interest of children in court, either in child protective cases or in cases where the parents, it was a parental rights case where they couldn't decide on what should happen with the children, or it was a divorce where they couldn't decide what should happen with the children. And the court would appoint me to figure out what was in the children's best interest. So I had given up guardian ad litem work after about 10 years, and I was just doing mediation by 2015. And I had a call from a woman who wanted me to be a guardian ad litem. And I said, no, I don't do that anymore. I just do mediation at this point. So, if you need mediation in the future, let me know. So then she called back and she said that yes, the family would like me to come in and mediate, that they had a case where they were looking at taking custody of the children away from a dad. They were going to file a guardianship case against him. And family members were all getting together to talk about this and figure out like how best to do this and all of that. And so we set up a time for me to go and meet with the family. So I went to meet with the family. I was going after work and after going to a volunteer organization. And I got a text telling me that we weren't meeting at the original location. We were going to meet at the person's house instead. And so I was on the phone with my my then husband driving, and I was going past a copse of trees, and I heard a voice in my head say, you should tell him where you're going, because you might not come home tonight. And I was just like, whatever, like, I'm not doing that. I'm so brave. That's just stupid. I'm not doing anything like that. So I went up there and I drove up to the house, and it was dusk. It was dusk. So, the sun had just set. And so you could still see, but you could tell, in that gloaming point where it's going to go. But there was a van there, and I had been told that there were people that were coming from the airport. So, and there was an elderly man out helping to direct the van. And I was told that was going to be her father that was there helping. And so I went, oh, okay, good. Like, it all lines up in terms of what I was told. And I asked where to park. And then because he was already out and talking, I got off the phone with my then husband really quickly. And because I wanted to look professional and not be on the phone when I was there for clients, right? And so I parked and I opened my door to get out of my car, and the man asked me if I had a computer with me, and I said no. And I turned to get my purse in the footwell on the passenger side, and he started tasing me with a taser cane. And I looked down and I could see the electricity arcing between my legs. And I looked up at him and he was just smiling. And I thought that this could be just a really bad, like, Halloween prank, because, like, the smile on his face didn't go along with the pain that I was experiencing. And I started to scream for help. I started screaming at him that it hurt, and he just kept smiling and he kept doing it. And then I realized that, he was not elderly, that his face actually, he looked more like my age, even though he had this scraggly wig. And so I thought maybe he was the dad that had found out what their plan was, and somehow I'm getting attacked for it, but nobody's coming to save me. I'm still screaming, nobody's coming, and he's still tasing me and smiling about it. So I put the taser cane, I trapped it between my legs because I didn't want that to go anywhere else on me. And I continued to scream for help. And so then he started trying to smother me. So his hand was coming at me to try to put his hand over my mouth. And fortunately for me, I had turned, when I turned to get out of the car, I had both my legs outside the vehicle. And also that meant that I had the ability to lean back into the passenger side fully. I wasn't trapped that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I leaned back into the vehicle, and he abandoned the taser cane and climbed in on top of me. And I could see the hand still coming, and I was looking at the dashboard, and I realized, like, oh, I could die tonight. There's a van. Nobody's coming to save me. And I reached up and I grabbed his hair and I pulled it, and the wig came down in my lap. And then, fortunately for me, because he wasn't tasing me anymore, then my legs could work again.
Yeah.
And so I was able to kick him off of me with my right leg. And I kicked him until I just kicked air. And then I sat up and I saw him take the wig out of my lap. I just saw a hand reach in and take the wig. And I brought my legs inside my car and I closed the door and I locked it and I waited for the next attack. Because you know as well as I do in horror movies, that's not where it ends, right?
Right.
But fortunately for me, that is where it ended. So I did that. The van started to slowly drive away down the driveway. And I was in shock, probably not, literally in shock, and also figuratively in shock. I was just like, really? That's it? Like, now I can go? I just have to slowly follow you down the driveway to get out of this? Like, that's okay. So I did a 3-point turn and I slowly followed the van down the driveway. And then I called 911 as soon as my car hit the pavement. Yep. And I was able to go. So that dramatically changed my life. Not only did it change my life in terms of, I guess, short-term things, right? In terms of I was very fearful, but in terms of long-term, it changed my life. So I'm going to do a faster version than just that piece of it, right? But I ended up figuring out who it was. I didn't know when he tased me who it was. Mm-hmm. He had changed his appearance to tase me. So I had always known him to have a mustache. He had shaved off his mustache. He had had hair of a certain length. He had shaved off his hair, and he also had pretended to be an elderly man. So he had used both a walker and this cane as a prop, mm-hmm. right, to convince me that he was elderly. Mm-hmm. So I had a friend drive me from, I got to safety at a gas station, and she was the closest person to that gas station to come and get me. And she's my closest friend too, because you can't call everybody and be like, hi, I just got attacked and somebody was going to stuff me in a van and I need somebody to come and like help me out. But she's that kind of a friend.
Yeah, good.
So she came, and on the way to the hospital, I was thinking about like, well, who could do something like this to me out of everybody I know? And, you know, I knew a good amount of people, having been a guardian ad litem and having been a mediator. Who would it be? And I had this case that I had last seen the guy like 4 years earlier. And I thought, out of anybody in the world, it could be him. So I thought it's either him or it's just some random person who found me on the internet. Those were my two options. And it ended up being him. So I had a child protective case in 2010, 2011, where I had met him, and he waited 4 years to get me. And then he got me. And the plan was to kidnap me. And I'm really clear that I would have been dead if he had succeeded, that I would have been tortured and I would have been dead. And that's a whole different way to live. You know, I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I can say that I've been in, you know, some fearful situations, but I've never experienced that kind of thing where somebody had that control over me to decide whether I was going to live or die, you know, like
right.
that feeling of I could be dead tonight. By the end of this evening, I'm not going to be around anymore. And that's got to be, and the pain that went along with being tased. And just,
yes. Well, and I will say to you too, I'm not telling you that I would have been dead that night, because he really enjoys inflicting pain. So I more suspect that I would have been tortured until he accidentally killed me, or he would have left me for dead after, but it wasn't. Yeah, it brought him so much joy.
And that's even worse
to me
than if he would just
yes
out of your misery.
Yes. And I ended up talking about that with my friend that had come and rescued me. We talked about that, I don't know, a good year later, because the concern was with other people around that if he were able to come for me again, that the next time he would come for me to kill me, that there would be,
right.
You know, because I think he basically saw me as a woman the first time. And so he liked to torture them. So I could be somebody he tortured. Whereas I think if it had been a man, he wouldn't have done it, because then he could have gotten hurt.
Yeah.
And so my theory was that, that was why that had happened. And the men were going to be people that he would, you know, kill from a distance as opposed to getting close. And when she told me that, you know, they were worried that I was going to die next time, I said, good, because I really don't want him to have a hold of me and be able to do like, I would much rather just have it be quick like a guy. Like it's just, I don't want him treating me like a woman. I don't.
Oh, no, I think that would be horrible. And it's quite the story, and I'm sure you've had to cut out a lot of details to be able to fit it in, but we do only have a few minutes left. So I want to touch on, you know, how has that redefined your life now, or you know, was that experience part of your transformation of you know, what you do now versus when you were a mediator?
Yes. So initially, after I was attacked by him, I really just wanted to go back to work. And that was my goal. And even in the hospital bed, I was just like, okay, so I was supposed to be a speaker at a conference like 5 days later or something, right? And I was saying to my then husband, all right, you're going to have to take the day off from work, because I know I'm not going to be able to sleep in a hotel I don't know by myself, but I need to go do presentations for people for 2 days straight. Mm-hmm. And he just smiled and nodded, knowing that there was no way I was going to be doing, like, I was on Fantasy Island. I was in shock on this. But he let me believe that. And then over the weekend, I realized I cannot present at all. Like I didn't have any focus. I didn't have any ability to focus. even though I was very fortunate that he was caught within 24 hours. And I was very fortunate that they kept him in jail, because honestly, the vast majority of people who are subjected to domestic violence don't have the luxury of having their person stay in jail the way that I did, right? And it's much more healing when you know that somebody's not going to be able to come out and come after you and get you.
Sure.
And for me, I had to deal with it sort of halfway, because his accomplice was allowed to still be out forever. She never had anything happen to her. So I still had that feeling of somebody could come, right? He had been able to convince this person to do this to me, right? To take part in this. And so anybody could show up, because I was a mediator. I had my doors open to people that I didn't know, right? They were going to be coming to my office. They were going to be working with me. And there were going to be two of them. Like, that's what I was signing up for voluntarily.
Right.
And you don't know how frightening it is to open the door to a stranger until you go through something like this. And then you have to. And some things that people just do without thinking, some things people do like kindly without thinking, aren't so kind when you've gone through something like this. So I used to volunteer in a lot of ways at different boards. And I had a couple of those boards send me flowers. Well, here's what you don't want as somebody who thought they were just going to get stuffed in a van. You don't want a strange man showing up at your door with a van. Like, it's just, I don't
think of that. Yeah.
No, they didn't think of it. They were lovely people. I got 2 things of flowers that I did not want.
It's funny, you don't know what the triggers are going to be for someone, you know.
You don't know. You don't know. And you don't know that you don't know that would be a trigger, because you're just thinking I'm giving flowers, right? And you're not recognizing. And also what happened was the prosecutor wanted me to not say anything about what had happened, because basically he didn't want to have my story out in the paper and then have to deal with it. And so it was just have them put their story in the paper, because they're not going to get cross-examined on their story. But if I say something different, right, and then that can be, everything that you say can be used against you in a court of law. And I knew that from having been in the system. So I wasn't talking to people. So the information that people had wasn't fully accurate. They didn't necessarily, it said that I had been tased. They thought it was with a cattle prod. They didn't know about the van. I don't think they disclosed that information. And it was very interesting, because I got an email from one of the foster parents for the children as a result of that article being put in that paper. The article it did not say who I was. It said I was a mediator. It said who he was, though.
Okay.
And they knew that I had done mediation in addition to guardian ad litem work. And so they reached out to me to say, is that you? Are you okay? It's like, you are right. That is me. And that was 4 years after we had dealt with this. But it was that kind of a person. Yeah. So for me, going back into mediation was a challenge. And I had PTSD from it, but for me, I was perfectly willing to be hypervigilant, because as far as I was concerned, he still had an accomplice out. He had managed to convince this person, right, to come after me. I didn't know who could be coming after me. And I still had a very open business, and I would be working after hours, and my business location was similar to the place where I was attacked, in that there was a, long dirt road. It was a small town kind of thing. And so it was set back, and all of the things that I had liked about my business in terms of it being a peaceful, quiet place, right? So people could come and mediate. Now, when it was the evenings and it was dark, it wasn't so peaceful for me getting from point A to point B. And all of a sudden I was very clear that, the most vulnerable point for me was when I was locking my office door and I had my back turned and I couldn't see what was happening. And then I had to get to my car that was locked, right? That there was that space. So I started bringing my dog to work. I had a dog that was 55 pounds. And she went from being the dog that only came on quiet days when I didn't have anything going on to coming in for chaos. And there was no way to tell your dog, so guess what? This is my job. I invite people in and they have a big argument and I help them to not argue, right? So I thought about it afterwards. God, what was the dog thinking the first time she saw this? This was all new, right? So she's just like, oh, yay, there's people here. And then they're fighting, but I'm still calm. And so she's sitting, but she ended up being quite the little mediator herself. So if they started arguing, she might go in between them, or she might go to the person that she felt like needed her the most.
Interesting.
So it was really sweet to watch her also sort of co-mediating with me.
I think maybe that should be a must in a mediation situation. Animals do the most incredible things.
It was really good, except Michelle, I have to tell you, so she was so good at going to people that wanted her that I started telling people that. And then I had a woman come in and she really wanted my dog to go to her. And my dog didn't like her at all. And even with me telling my dog to go over to her, my dog would come back over to me as soon as she could to get away from this woman. So I had to stop telling people that.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for failure there.
Oh, it was going so well. It was just that one, they just always is somebody, but she had never had somebody that she was so, no, I don't want to. And then there were people also, some people don't like dogs, or they're allergic to dogs, or they're afraid of dogs. And so there was a little bit of that too. And then of course, none of those people was she's thinking, oh no, I don't want to touch that person. I had to be calling her over. But it was really, the hardest part for me was having to face off against him in court again, because I knew that he would take it to trial, and he did. And by the time we went to trial, in his criminal trial, it had been almost 3 years. It was a little over 2.5 years. And by that time, he and his attorneys were not agreeing as to how the case should proceed. And he had been through multiple attorneys with the same thing. And so he was going to represent himself. And so he and I were literally facing off against each other in the courtroom. And that, in some ways, it could have been empowering, in terms of actually facing off against him. But it was also very frightening to think that he could go free and that he would be coming after me again.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't want to mediate anymore after that.
I can appreciate that. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I tried it, and the difference for me between after I was attacked and after the trial was that after I was attacked, when I mediated, I still enjoyed mediating. I was having a hard time, initially you have a hard time being present in the moment. And so I had to train myself how to be present in the moment again. But I really enjoyed mediating. I really enjoyed helping people in that way. I liked, I was always a good learner. So it was like a quick learn on your feet. How do I do this? How do I figure this out? Where are we going with this? And I liked all of that. But then after, when people would start fighting, I just wanted to tell them to be quiet. I didn't want to do it at all.
Kind of like, get over yourself, people. I don't want to have to deal with this.
Yes. It made me cranky, and I could still fake it because I had done it for so long, right? I still had all of the habit patterns in terms of being able to do it and have you not know that really I just did not want to at all.
Yeah.
And so then it was, well, what am I going to do with myself? What am I going to do? And so I ended up deciding to go on sabbatical, but really it was the sabbatical was a safety net for me. It was a self-created sabbatical, right? It was an unpaid sabbatical. So I asked the court system if I could have 3 months to go on sabbatical, unpaid, and just go off and figure out what my next steps were going to be. And I asked my then husband for a divorce about 2 weeks after the trial. So
you hadn't had enough drama in your life at that point, so you needed to add more.
No, he was really good for the first year after it happened. And then he was really bad for the last year before the trial.
Yeah.
And I guess sort of in between, I don't really know about the months in between, but like I can sort of bookend really good, really bad. And we had tried couples counseling, and the thing is that we were struggling. We had been struggling. We tried couples counseling in December of 2017 and January of 2018. And the trial was in May of 2018. So the couples counseling failed horribly. And what I realized was, or I guess the way that I reframed for myself, because I needed to find a way to have power in this. And so I decided that instead of feeling like he was rejecting me, I was going to take this as he is training me how to leave him. So I'm going to train me how to leave him too. And so I started my training process, and I started looking for jobs that were down south. And I had visions. I was going to drive off into the sunset with my dog. That was my plan. And so all of that was going along. And at that point, I was still looking at mediation. I was going to be a mediator or, a director of mediation, something like that, where I would be able to use those skills. And then in March of 2018, our dog had been sick for a while, but we thought we had it sort of under control, but we weren't sure because it wasn't getting better. So sort of this push-pull. And then he and I got in this big fight the first weekend in March. And I took the dog, and I am so done. I'm going to go stay at my sister's, and, I just need some time to figure out how to change things up, but like all done. And he didn't believe me, I think is what it was. Like he was just very confident, not like he would have been in the past, worried that I would, like he really had gotten to this point. But this, he was just like, whatever. So it took a few hours for it to set in that I'm really doing this. And then he still wasn't apologizing. He wasn't recognizing that he had done anything. And I was just like, yeah, I don't care. I'm going and doing this. So after I spent the night at my sister's, then he realized like, oh, I think she's serious. And now she's shown that she can live without, like she's actually spent a night somewhere else, which I wasn't wanting to do before that. So then he wanted to get back together. I did not want to get back together on Sunday. And then that Monday, my dog died.
Oh.
We had to put her down on Monday. And I had not trained myself to leave my husband without my dog. That was my security blanket, right?
Right.
So like my security blanket had been my husband and my dog, right?
Yeah.
And then my security blanket was my dog. And then I was just like, oh. So there was a whole grieving period, right? That we did grieve together. And then he was right back to shenanigans, and I was right back to, okay, well, you're just training me to leave you again, right? And simple process. Yeah. And so I knew when I went through the trial that I was going to leave. I just didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't have it set up in terms of what my what my next step would be.
You didn't have a plan for the uncertainty in front of you.
I had as much of a plan as I could make, right? And that's the thing. I actually have been training for this whole uncertainty piece for a lot longer than the 18 months is what it is, because the whole criminal trial, I didn't have any control over. I was just a witness. So he had rights as the defendant. The prosecutor got to decide what happened, you know, what he was charged with, what the prosecutor was going to ask for. The prosecutor got to decide that the defendant, that the co-conspirator wasn't going to be charged. And I have never been able to get him to charge the co-conspirator with anything, even though she admitted on the stand that the plan was to stuff me in my trunk. I have not been able to get that prosecutor to do anything against her.
The system. It's the system.
It's just it is an exercise in what you have control over in your life. And so I had been somebody, I guess I still am somebody who is a strong-willed individual.
Yep.
I had been somebody who was not so good with the serenity prayer. Like, I really like the serenity prayer, but I do not have the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Like, I just strive for patience to accept the things I cannot change, right? But serenity that's like a whole different level.
Yeah.
And I also was really bad at having the wisdom to know the difference between what I could change and what I could not. So I used to bang my head against the wall a lot on useless things.
I can imagine.
So now I'm so much better at all of that. I'm so much better at the serenity prayer, but it took a school of hard knocks to make me. So
I can identify with all of that, because I don't do well with not being in control, and then I had to learn my lesson and go to jail for it. that you have to read the magazine to get that story.
Yes,
magazine. The story is in there, but that's where I had to learn that whole let it go, give it up to the universe. You can't get
right.
You know.
Well, I would think the whole process in terms of getting arrested, you know, like all of that is all what you're not in control of.
Exactly.
And
yeah. And you know what? That was a little bit of my pre-COVID-19, you know, conditioning.
Right.
So by the time that hit, then I was like, I can't leave the house. Okay.
Right. So much better than being in jail. Like
Exactly. We've gone over, I know we went over when you were interviewing me. So easy to do. We'll have to continue the conversation somehow to get for people to, you know so much more about you, because you've got a lot of depth and a lot of lovely layers to peel off.
Well, thank you. I would love that.
But meanwhile, as we try to decide, how we get you back or continue the story, check out Facebook Midlife, where the queen saves herself, because we are the queen of our destiny when we reach this stage of life. And it's a great Facebook group. So you've got some good members, good engagement going on, and very worthwhile for people to get engaged with you. And you do some good things. You do some good work. And
well, thank you. I enjoyed it because I interviewed you in it, and I interviewed Davina in there, right, who's also written a chapter in the Lemonade Stand. And then I'll be interviewing Danita in 2 days, who's also written a chapter in the Lemonade Stand. So I have some great women in there from the Lemonade Stand.
You do. And I think that's how I landed in there, because Danita, I think, had signed up, and I'm like, I adore her, so I'll follow her anywhere she goes.
Right.
I gotta let you go at this point.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you so much.
You.
I had never known the details to your story, so I really I had to know.
No, I'm happy to share. I have a memoir that I've written that I want to get published, and so I want people to know this story. I want people to know what it is to go through something like this, and that there is hope, right? That you can go through this and you can retrain your brain and you can do really good things with your life afterwards.
True. That's why I give people a voice, because you know what? The truth is stranger than fiction.
Right.
And but the inspiring part of it all is the people who are able to come out of that with their sweet glass of lemonade and sip it and enjoy
Mm-hmm.
it and go on with life. So
Right.
I appreciate you and your time here, and we got to have you back. We got to finish the story.
We could do a part 2.
We'll do part two. We'll do part two. But then we'll have to tell everybody you got to listen to part 1 before you listen to
It's
part
true.
2. Otherwise, it's not going to make any sense, right? All right. So I am going to say goodbye to my Lemonade Legend listeners and viewers out there. Thank you so much for being a part of our chat today with Meredith Richardson. And like I say, just keep making that lemonade and keep juicing it up and sweetening it up and making it an amazing drink. Thank you, Meredith. Appreciate your time here with me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye.